I've not been acting for more than 20 years now. The last time I acted Julius Caesar.
Really?
Mm.
Where?
At school.
Mm-hmm.
School acting.
I was never any good at acting.
So that must be 22 years ago.
The book of Julius Caesar. Yes, yes. I was one of the common men, I think. '7 was Cicero. We nicknamed him Cicero because in that in that book, Cicero was described as a man who would not follow what other men had begun.
Now, the first encounter I made with him was, Mbarara was renowned for bullying, teasing. So I remember he was going to class in the morning, early in the morning, and he phoned me out of the dormitory, crying, actually, literally crying. I wanted to go home. So he called me, said, "Ati umwana is yoha, nti ndares katega. Ati noriga nti ndigandiza. Ati ori wachawe nti yeah, ati ninchika norira, and abantu nubatera they are teasing us. Ati kandi mukuru wawe kari yahama yazi, atawacha atakurebera, ataprotecting. Ati narara mu dormitory ndijo, ndi nubateasinga nyikiro. Ati mwine atuhumura. Ati kwaragiro ndijo wakwataho uzonga mbiri. That's my first encounter with him, and it made me, like him so much.
One thing I observed was that Museveni also had his own independent mind and life, and all through life.
When it came to debating, he would go to the point of hair splitting. You couldn't take him for granted. No. You had to give him a very solid ground on which you are standing to convince him that that was. So we can have him, Cicero.
I am particularly impressed by his fearless in the early part of the struggle, when he crossed the Lake Tanganyika, which is the deepest lake in the world, I think. And he doesn't know how to swim, but he crossed it in a canoe. And on that lake, there are pirates. He went to Burundi. He was looking for weapons. It is in the early part of the struggle. Nobody knows about it, but this is where he passed through. I mean, he committed himself to fight for democracy. He was at that time fighting against Amin.
He normally didn't belong to organization which he didn't lead. Consequently, his whole training was a train to be a leader.
And they were described as a man who was thinking too much. Yes. And that is suited you well then. He was a great thinker.
They were intellectuals. We were intellectuals. In fact, I was standing with them when the British flag was brought down and our flag at Kororo. But I told them that we were heading for disaster.
No, it's all right. You can hear me?
Please start by sharing your earliest recollections.
Oh, the earliest. I wrote in my book that I must have been either 4 months or less, because my mother went to Ukwiho Bunyatsi to pluck grass from the ground using her hands. And she put me down, lying on my back, and I was looking at her from the catant of my eye, the corner of my eye, and she was moving away and away and away. And I got so worried that she was abandoning me until she came back after some time and said, Mama, you are still here. So I keep telling people that it must have been 4 months or less, because otherwise, if I don't know when children start crawling or kwajura, because if I was able to kwajura, I would have followed her.
The young Museveni was the firstborn of Amos Kaguta and Esteri Kokondeka. He was born into the pastoralist and nomadic community of the Bahima of Ankole. At the time of his birth, the family lived in Nkondo village in the district of Ntungamo in western Uganda. Aside from his parents and uncles, his great-grandmother, Nyinanchwende, was a big influence on Museveni in his formative years. Nyinanchwende was the wife of Kashanku, Museveni's great-grandfather. She would often regale the young Museveni with tales of the times long before his birth. One such tale was her encounter with white colonizers who were working with African mercenaries. These mercenaries would be instructed to shoot their fellow Africans arbitrarily for various reasons. On this occasion, Nyinanchwende hid herself, her young son and a calf in a swamp and remained there till the group had long gone. She often taught her great-grandson about the virtues of courage. Cattle keepers were required to be innovative, courageous, and dedicated to the survival of their families and their livelihood, the herd. From a young age, boys worked closely with their fathers, going out with the herds and returning late. This is why many families in the community rejected the formal education that required going to school, because it deprived the family of the child's assistance at work and limited the child's traditional upbringing. Museveni's father, however, was surprisingly open-minded on the question of schooling. So in 1952, Yoweri Museveni began his journey in formal education.
This was 1952, second term. So I would have been like 7 almost. 7, I think. Oh, I remember very clearly, because they told us that because when I came to the school, I joined 1B. 1B was like pre-primary. And we were told, you have second term. So I couldn't forget. Then, and then we were writing in the sand. Writing in the sand with our finger like this. And then later on, they said we buy slates. Now, this 1952, I was in a girls' school. We were about 5 of us. We were there, boys. There was Sam Magara. He was there with us. Then this a man called Nasan Tandekwire, he was there also. And then we had a Mnyarwanda boy. His father was called Kachere or something. And then myself.
After Yoweri Museveni, Amos Kaguta and Esteri Kokundeka went on to have a daughter, Violet Kajubiri, and in 1960 had their second son, Caleb Akandwanaho, who in future would take on the nom de guerre Salim Saleh. In 1959, Yoweri Museveni joined Mbarara High School for 2 years, where he did what was then called junior secondary, and thereafter joined Ntare School for 6 years of high school. With a Christian foundation strongly encouraged by his charismatic mother, Esteri Kokundeka, and the grounding of the work ethic of the Bahima cattle-keeping background, formal education was a major advantage for Museveni. His time in school fundamentally changed his understanding of society and world affairs. History was particularly illuminating for him. He was enthralled by the study of the Ottoman Empire, the use of ships to cross oceans, and the establishment of trade routes across Africa and the globe. The tales of Bartholomew Diaz reaching the Cape of Good Hope in 1488 and the first Arabs and Europeans reaching the East African coast in the 1800s were of specific interest to the young Museveni. They reinforced his belief in the ability of Africans to improve themselves and their circumstances. By 1966, when Milton Obote abrogated the Uganda Constitution, Yoweri Museveni and a few of his contemporaries were in their final year of Ntare School. Before that, in 1964, a referendum had been held concerning the Lost Counties dispute between the Buganda and Bunyoro kingdoms concerning Buyaga and Bugangaizi counties. The question was whether these counties were to remain as part of the Buganda kingdom, be returned to the Bunyoro kingdom, or instead become a separate district. The dispute was won in favor of Bunyoro.
After the independence, you know that short history. From 1962, Obote takes power. Then Buganda is the Kabaka becomes the president, non-executive. Then by 64, there were already differences. The Banyoro, when they went to when the leaders here went to Lancaster to accept the general principles of independence, there was a clause that Bunyoro Kingdom, the counties which they lost under Kabalega, should determine their fate through a referendum. So they brought it in Parliament. We need a referendum as part of the independence agreement. Buganda opposed it. But then the other members said, no, we should have it. So they went for elections in the lost counties, and they voted to leave Buganda and be part of Bunyoro. That's Buyaga and Bugangaizi. Previously, the map of Buganda it used to touch the Karbat. But when they voted, they cut off those two counties. And that is how the fighting started.
You know, it's a pity. When Obote came into power, before he came to power, when UPC was formed, he made a speech at a rally in Jinja that UPC had come to destroy Mengo. It's a complicated situation. Buganda became colonized before Uganda was formed. And the agreement, the 1900 agreement they had with the British was for Buganda. And Uganda had not been formed. But there was a provision in Clause 3, I think, which said that when the protectorate was formed, Buganda will be a province of the protectorate of equal status with the other three provinces. But as it turned out, the other three provinces were not formed. So Buganda stuck out as a sore finger. And everybody looked at it and said, they are being treated differently from the districts, blah, blah, blah. And this is what Obote meant, that he was going to sort out Buganda. And he did so by reducing it to district level.
In May of 1966, there was growing agitation from the Buganda leadership demanding the removal of the central government from Buganda land, where the national capital had been established in Kampala. Riots were staged in different parts of Buganda. 3 years later, Kabaka Mutesa died in London. In the midst of the chaos, Milton Obote abrogated the 1962 Constitution of Uganda and declared himself president.
It's been said that you'd like to put an end to the Kabakaship. Is that so?
It's not my problem to put an end to Kabakaship. We have 4 Kabakaships in Uganda. And it's not, I don't have to go for one. If I wanted to put an end to Kabakaship, I would go for 4, not 1.
It was abrogated in 1966. At that time, we were in senior 6. In fact, it was one of the sad days. I think, the only Muganda in Mbaguta house. We had a common room, and we heard that everything had. And I was very sad about it. And I think the only sympathy I got was from Museveni, and there was my friend Adam Mbekezi. The other boys said, well, they were not bothered about really. And at that time, the kingdom of Ankole was also there, but it was not yet affected by the abrogation of the constitution.
Yes, in February 22nd, when Obote abrogated the constitution.
But there is another aspect that has been felt throughout the country. This includes the fact that now we have a new constitution. It is also clear that because of the troubles, it was not possible for the whole country, and even for the government, to give the whole attention to the matter of nation building. A considerable amount of attention had to be given in containing the dangerous situation which had developed in Uganda.
We were in the dormitory at Ntare, Mbaguta house. How can somebody abolish our constitution? Then we had some UPC boys who started saying, what will you do? Obote has got army. Then I said, but what is army? I can join army anytime.
First of all, Yali Mulokole, he was in the scripture union. So he was very, and also very political. He was very active about what was going on. And we got close to, at that time, before the kingdoms were abolished, we had also a lot of access to the Enganzi. I think it was called Kaigiriza at that time.
So I organized 3 of us, went to see the chief minister of Ankole, Enganzi, Cicero, Kahigiriza. We said we want to fight Obote. And then Kahigiriza said, no, but you children, you young people, don't panic so much. This Obote will collapse by himself. Because 2 days before or after, Nkuruma's government collapsed in Ghana. And then Kaijeza said, you look, if Nkuruma was much stronger than this Obote, you hear that he has collapsed. And so you go back and study. Which means he didn't agree with our idea. So that's when we said, now what we do, we must go to Tanzania. To study, we must go and study in Tanzania. Because we had been reading from 1962 in the library, there were stories in the newspapers about Frelimo fighting the Portuguese in Mozambique.
As a young man, Yoweri was a very brilliant man, intellectually. He was very bright. And he was actually one of the best students in the class, doing very well, especially the art subjects, but he was an all-round man. Even in science subjects, he used to do very well.
I had intended to do English literature at Makerere, but Butagira came and talked about doing law and whatnot and so on and so forth. So I think I then decided to do law. Kategaya, myself, and others decided to do law. And we also thought Museveni was going to do the same. And when the results came, we had the necessary qualification to do law at Dar es Salaam. 3 principles and what we had them. Then we go to Dar es Salaam. When you have at the university choosing subjects, we noticed that he was not doing law. He had decided to do 3-2-2. That meant law, political science, and economics.
Dar es Salaam was a very good university, a very open university. You would have some personalities coming to give you some interesting lectures. And those lectures were quite enlightening. Some of them were people who were really questioning the system of the economic system at that time, which was capitalism versus socialism. And we had also teachers in the university who were people like Professor Livingstone was a capitalist, and you had Professor Centage, for instance, that one was a Bulgarian, these were communists or socialists. And so they were presenting different views.
And Tanzania was the center of socialism at that time. And liberation movement people, and so on. So we got in. And TAN Youth League was at the university. We were not Tanzanians, but we joined. We also joined into that.
And one could see from that time on that you really see Yoweri was passionate about that. He could give examples. So I think this is this. And we could also see, everybody could see, it was clear that there was need for change of direction. And then we'll compare our own, the way things were being run in Uganda, in Kenya, with the way Mwalimu Nyerere was leading Tanzanians and so on, bringing them together instead of tearing them apart. And we are seeing a clear example of good leadership and a good example. And we are seeing a future for that country. But then we're also seeing difficulties in the other countries, like Uganda then and Kenya at that time.
My idea was, if Africans can fight Portuguese, how about this Obote? How can he abolish our constitution? So that's why we said we put our choices, all of them, to Dar es Salaam. First choice, second choice, third choice. If they don't admit me in Dar es Salaam, I will not go to university.
In the meanwhile, Museveni had used to have a lot of interaction with the liberation people, and Mondlane in particular. And it is then that he somehow organized for we members of USAF to go to Mozambique to see the liberated areas. I think Mondlane wanted the publicity to show that at least they had liberated certain areas and so on and so forth. So we met, I think Museveni organized it, and we sneaked out of the university to go to Mozambique.
So that's when I came with the idea, but I said, but if Mondlane is saying that there's a liberated area, so you students, if you are serious, let's go and see it. What's the problem?
But at that time, the Tanzanian government was very strict. Also did not, everything had to be done secretly. Because if they got to know of it, then we would be in trouble as students. So some of us were scared.
We sneaked out of university, went to Mnazi Moja, where there was a bus. Then they put us on a bus which moved us to some place, and then we joined the army trucks of the Frelimo people. That's the first time I was in a place where there were no vehicles. Everything had to be on foot, and the major equipment, gun, and so there we are.
So we went and visited the liberated area, and it really changed it exposed the campaign of these secret services of the Europeans. They were very happy, the freedom fighters were very happy, because we were able to prove that, yes, you see some are in the nightclubs, but they are those who are fighting.
Carmike was really revolutionary. And Rodney was also another revolutionary, Walter Rodney, yeah. And so you became very close to them. And I think that's where it started looking the other way. I think that's the turning point.
So 1970, we came back, and of course, Obote was still in government. In Dar es Salaam, of course, we used to be very anti-Obote and whatnot and so on and so forth. But then we graduated, and we had to come back and work. And I joined the DPP's department, and Museveni joined the president's office, to my surprise, because I
had actually joined Obote's office. I was working there. But now Amin comes in. Now it was clear Amin had no idea, because Obote had some ideas, although he had a distortion in his understanding of politics.
And that's when Amin came and overthrew the government in 1971. Amin was also running away from criminal prosecution, because they were involved in Congo, in gold, I think he was also involved with Obote. I can't remember. I'm told they were involved together. But there were scandals within the government. So, and Obote wanted to arrest Amin, so Amin overthrew him before.
Trouble soon began to emerge in the Obote-Amin alliance. Milton Obote reduced Idi Amin's role in the army from commander-in-chief of all armed forces to army commander, and took on control of all the armed forces himself. Amin, however, had built a base in the military by recruiting heavily from West Nile, his home area. There was a growing suspicion that Obote was going to arrest Amin So in a preemptive move, while President Obote was attending a Commonwealth meeting in Singapore, Idi Amin executed a coup d'etat on January 25th, 1971.
The members of the Uganda Army and Air Force decided to take over from the civilian rule because of the last arrangement which were made by the Dr. Apollo Milton Obote to disarm the whole tribe of Uganda except his own tribe, Langi and Acholi. And also, that is the point which brought all this problem.
One morning, I wake up. Of course, I had no vehicle at that time. We used to take a taxi from Najanankumbi to the car park and then walk up to. So one morning, I wake up. I walk. As normal, I get to go to Parliament building, and I find it surrounded by soldiers. They said, "Go, go." So I said, "Look." I moved back to the car park, and as I was arriving at the park, shooting also started, and the taxi people used. I got to a taxi and tried to get back to Najanankumbi. The people, I think the man abandoned us at Kibuya, says, "You people." So I walked to Najanankumbi, and as I got there, we had the announcement the government had been overthrown.
Amin comes in, he has no idea at all. He's simply there, president, army, what? Being manipulated by foreigners, the British, the Israelis, of course, we didn't care about our... So that's why we said, no. For Amin, we fight.
One morning, I'm in my office there. Yes, somebody comes traveling in a Volkswagen variant and tells me Museveni is in Nyendo. He wants to see you. What? I said, yeah, he wants to see you. By that time, I think the struggle to remove Amin had started, and so he briefed me about the whole thing and said he's now here. He was going to Kampala to look up Kategaya, and we try to team up and then see how we can organize to do things. We discussed the whole project. It was a very dangerous project.
So the question was, how do you fight? So either we would fight with the UPC together, and we told UPC, we can fight with you if you agree to form a broad front. NRM. Don't just go there and say UPC, we are fighting for UPC, because UPC is narrow. It's a narrow force. Even the elections of 1962, they never got more than 50%. Because it was sectarian, it was Protestants of some areas, not even of the whole, certainly not the ones of Buganda. The ones of Buganda were Kabaka Yeka. So then DP Catholic, then Kabaka Yeka, Buganda Protestants. So our line was, let's unite the people, because Amin is against all of you.
It was not a joke. It was a very, very tough experience. He had just sent away the Indians in 1972. So we were undergoing a very time that would mark the rest of Uganda's history, because the sending away of the Indians meant really a change from a colonial economic arrangement, something else.
This is even more important at the present time when we are in the process of transferring the control of our economy into the hands of our indigenous people. But no one will be allowed to acquire more than one business, industry, or buildings. To assist government in carrying out this exercise smoothly and equitably, forms have been prepared which I believe you are already familiar with as a result of the meeting which you had with my ministers this morning. I would like to take this opportunity to advise the outgoing Asians that it is in their own interest that they fill the appropriate forms as a matter of urgency to enable their property to be disposed of as soon as possible.
Amin has already expelled the Asians, and all British judges and lawyers were dismissed. We had to ask our students to go and become magistrates, become prosecutors, and become defenders before they finished the course. So it was a very difficult time, but the most difficult thing about during that time was disappearance of people.